Okay, like I said, we're going to talk about the weather. And everybody hoping for that big open fall, no matter where you are in this country. We need more time to let these crops finish. Well, I'm hoping our next guest brings some good farming weather news. It is Brett Anderson with AccuWeather. Hey, Brett, how's it going?
Doing great today. We've been dealing with the hurricane down across the Bahamas and into the Florida area. So it's been busy week and a half, I guess you could say. So we're looking forward to the hurricane quickly exiting off the North American coast here, hopefully in the next few days.
Yeah, the video and footage that I've seen on some of the news networks is just like, it's devastating. That is just awful.
It looks like tornado damage across parts of the Bahamas there. So fear for the worst, no doubt about that.
Absolutely, man. Hey, in generalities here, across Canada, the biggest question I think a lot of people are asking is, what happened to summer? Like, did we get it? Like, where'd it go?
Yeah, well, it was there. It was there, believe me, especially across the north. I mean, you could talk to people up in Alaska and northern parts of Canada, and it's been incredibly warm compared to normal. So usually when it's really warm across the far north, somewhere it's got to end up being cooler, and that typically ends up being across parts of southern Canada. So, and that's kind of the same deal you see in the wintertime. Usually when we have basically what we say a blocking pattern, meaning high pressure up across the Arctic region, where it's usually warm and and drier, that usually means it's going to be cold and stormy farther to the south. So that's kind of the pattern that we had here. So unusual warmth up across the far north usually translates to slightly cooler conditions farther to the south.
Hey, now in eastern Canada, the big talk amongst farmers is, will this corn finish? We need a spectacular September in front of us here in order to get the black layer so that we don't have any sort of a disaster. What can we expect in eastern Canada, parts of Ontario and Quebec, as we now are in the beginning of September?
Well, some good and bad news. I guess we could look at some good news. Is I do think it is going to be warmer than normal across much of southern Ontario through southern Quebec into the Atlantic Canada this fall, especially during the month of September into early October. I think temperatures are going to be above normal. So that's good news. The bad news is, at least in Ontario through northern Quebec, I do think we're going to see a storm track, which is going to bring above normal rainfall across, especially around the Great Lakes region, right up into northern parts of Quebec in those areas. So maybe dealing with a fair amount of storms coming through there with the rain and even some thunderstorms. Thunderstorm season might actually linger a little bit longer than it usually does, well into September across parts of Ontario. However, going farther east, I do think we're looking at drier than normal conditions across southeastern Quebec through much of the Maritimes.
It's interesting when you say above average September because, of course, the spring in eastern Canada was so cool, so wet. Is this really a case of just this natural situation of like the average working out? We have to have an above average September to get to some sort of an average?
No, I don't know about that. It's hard to say about that. Yeah, wish it was that simple. That's a tough one at this point. So, we basically, what we look when we come up with these forecasts, obviously we look at water temperatures are very critical across the Pacific and the Atlantic. Those are very important here. We look to see if there's an El Nino ongoing out in the Pacific or La Nina. Right now it looks like near neutral conditions for the fall, which doesn't really help us out too much in terms of seasonal forecast. And then we look at what was the overall pattern across southern Canada and even the United States during the summer months, and we try to match that pattern up with previous years. So we come up with the analog years, and several of our analog years do show a persistent storm track coming up from Colorado up through the Great Lakes, and again above normal rainfall there. But they're also showing much above normal temperatures across western Canada and also across Atlantic Canada during at least a good part of the fall season.
How concerned should we be about frost in eastern Canada? Because an above average September with an early frost would still be devastating.
Yeah, I don't. We were just looking at the pattern today. Actually, there's a chance we could see some frost, a little bit of early season freeze across parts of northern Ontario, central Quebec. I wouldn't be surprised early next week, Sunday, Monday time period. Strong high coming down, but once that moves out, I don't really see anything worrisome in terms of frost or freeze. The overall pattern looks like a lot of Pacific air across much of southern Canada here through at least mid to late September. So odds favor based on this pattern. I think we're looking at, for most areas in the east, a later frost, meaning maybe at least a week later compared to normal.
Okay. And before we leave Ontario, how long can this above average pattern last? Does it have a chance to skirt its way into October, or is it just too far ahead to think about it? Oh, it does. Okay,
sure,
good.
especially near the lakes. Certainly, lakes are running warm once again, and they hold a lot of heat. Water holds a lot of heat, so that, especially near around the lakes, I could see how October ends up being fairly mild, especially in terms of nighttime temperatures. But we do think October will feature a pattern change coming down with some colder shots coming down into the eastern prairies, and some of that may dump into parts of Ontario during mid-October. So I would not be surprised we see a couple of cold shots coming down at least into central and northern Ontario during the month of October. Again, abnormally chilly during that time. So that's the time period we have to worry about. I think as we get in November looks mild across eastern Canada once again.
Oh, well, hey, you know what? I'm liking your Eastern Canadian forecast, Brett. I'm liking it.
Yeah, I'm liking it. That's one thing liking it. We hope it verifies, but we'll see about that. But yeah, I'm with you on that.
Nice, man. Okay, let's move into the prairies. Similar sort of concerns, different reasons though. We were dry early. We got late June, early July rains. It kind of gave this crop a bit of a second life, and we've been allowed to sort of work our way for the most part to average. And StatCan numbers are expecting that sort of yield on the forecast standpoint. So what can we expect in terms of weather? Because everybody is saying we need some time yet. Are we going to get it here in September on the prairies?
Oh, in September, I think so. Yeah. Normal's a good thing whenever we say normal, but actually, I think in the prairies we're looking at near to above normal temperatures for the fall season here across much of the region, and rainfall, I think, is going to be below average across the southern half of Alberta through southwestern Saskatchewan for the fall season. So that's some good news there. I would not be surprised, though. I did mention this, though, with those cold shots coming in October. But it is October. We could see some abnormally cold weather coming in again during early October into parts of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So don't be surprised about that. But I think September, we're looking pretty good, I think, in terms of weather conditions here. Generally warmer than normal and mostly drier than normal, especially across southwestern sections.
So does that cold pattern in October also bring moisture in snow as it turns colder, or what do you
Sure,
say?
it could. I mean, that type of pattern usually doesn't bring a lot of moisture because your air is coming from the northwest where there's not much moisture, but certainly could see some, snow shower activity with that. In terms of a big storm, hard to say at this point. It's almost impossible to say. Usually most of the snow we see in October is mostly in the mountains, obviously out to the west, so I wouldn't want to go that far. But I do think we're going to have some abnormally colder nights coming in early October across the eastern prairies, so don't be surprised about that.
Are we going to avoid that dreaded F word in the prairies, that frost, or will it be more of a normal frost based on your forecast?
I think we may see a slightly early frost in Manitoba and, again, eastern Saskatchewan. I think we're near normal western Saskatchewan, and then probably a little bit late in Alberta. So that's what I'm forecasting at this point.
Yeah, when you're reviewing the data, obviously this is based on a lot of modeling and a lot of analysis.
Yeah.
As you look at like a forecast going out 30 days, just for the interest of our audience, is this like updated daily as you're crunching these numbers, or how does that look?
No. We have we have a special long-range forecasting team, and they will update this usually twice a week. It changes because if you do it every day, it's really you're just asking for trouble. You don't want to flip and flop like that as much because it's not a good thing. So usually twice a week they'll re-review this stuff, especially going out several weeks. When we're coming to seasonal forecasts, we try to update, do initial forecasts, and then we do an update like a month later to see the new modeling. Because usually the seasonal forecasts, the modeling for seasonal forecasts, that stuff comes out once a month usually. So we re-review that once that comes up.
Brett, a lot of prairie growers, they've been locked in this 4 years of really, really dry conditions. It's really been frustrating. I happen to live in the middle of that here in the Palliser Triangle. Do we have any chance, as you look at this winter ahead, to maybe block out of this a little bit and start to get a little bit more moisture than we've been seeing for the past 4 years, or am I just hopeful? Is that just wishful thinking?
Oh, there's always a chance, but obviously we all know what the long-term trends are showing, and that's obvious. But with a trend, we're trending towards drier, warmer winters. That trend is it. But if you look at each year, the line is not smooth. It's up and down, sometimes gets kind of extreme, couple of extremes there. So, yes, the odds of getting a colder, wetter winter have diminished, but we're still going to have those winters. They're just fewer and farther between at this point. So that's the key of these long-range forecasts. We got to try to figure out what winters are going to have those type of conditions. We're still working, starting to look at the winter forecast at this point, but certainly wouldn't rule it out. But it's just, like I said, the odds are getting less for that type of winter. But again, they're going to happen. They're certainly going to happen. Maybe this winter will be one of those.
So what I heard you say in the prairies, warm September, but get as much combining done as possible because October, it'll turn.
Yeah, I think so, and especially in the eastern prairies. But the signals are pretty strong for Alberta on west for a fairly mild fall in terms of temperatures here.
Hey, Brett, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Take care.